Welcome to the source of commercial real estate, where we talk to the experts in commercial real estate so you can grow your business, find a competitive advantage, and use real estate to live the life that you want. I am your host, Jonathan Hayek, and today I am talking with Jerry Rosengarten. Jerry Rosengarten. Listeners, we've got an incredibly inspiring story for you today. Jerry is a commercial real estate investor. He's an entrepreneur, and he has an amazingly inspirational story that I think you're going to really connect with. Jerry is a Brooklyn-born serial entrepreneur whose greatest skill is an extraordinary ability to perceive form and structure and opportunity from within disorder, including developing products to deal with dyslexia, reimagining real estate, and investing early and heavily in solar energy. Jerry's life of invention has led to substantial commercial success. His first big hit came in the 70s with the leisure suit, which became a cultural fashion phenomenon that stoked his confidence and staked his growing desire to build landmark New York projects such as the Lofts, and the A-list destination, the Bowery Hotel. Today, Jerry owns one of the largest private solar farms in the Northeast, located on Long Island's eastern tip, and his creative passions are focused on environmental stewardship and active advocacy for those suffering from learning disabilities. Jerry, I am sincerely looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, and I appreciate the introduction. I don't know if I agree with all of it, but I appreciate it.
Well, Jerry, we'll let listeners decide. Thank you so much for joining me. To start off, why don't we just get an idea of who Jerry Rosengarten is? Tell us a little bit about your background and what your work looks like today.
I don't know if I'll start with what my work looks like today, but I will tell you my background, which starts in Brooklyn. And I had tremendous problems in school because I was dyslexic. Basically, I've never been able to read until I was age 50. So all the work that was done prior to that was without that ability. And the purpose, I guess, of the book, because it actually didn't start out with this purpose, but the purpose of the book now is that learning disabled people, or for that matter, disabled people of any kind, can perform at excellent levels. And all it requires is to do it, and don't give up. Trust in yourself. That's my message. Now, what was the first question you asked? Where am I now?
just a little bit about your background and what do you spend your time doing today?
Well, I'm building actually the top of the Bowery Hotel. I'm redoing the whole top. It's a major job. And I'm building a house in Sag Harbor. And I wrote this book. And I invented a product for Apple, which I patented. And we'll see getting that out into the world.
Jerry, you have this incredible history of entrepreneurship and seemingly defying the odds through perseverance. You mentioned that you couldn't read until you were nearly 50 years old. Can you kind of take us back to your childhood and tell us what it was like growing up, specifically when you were school age and having this thing about you? I imagine it was sort of a secret. So can you tell us how you were able to overcome this disability of dyslexia?
Well, first of all, there was a secret, because very few people, if anyone, knew about dyslexia. When I went through high school, went through public school and high school and 2 years of college, they just didn't know it. The word was not common to most people. And I, as a child, I read in front of the class because they pushed me to read in front of the class. And then they laughed at me when I was reading in front of the class. It was very hard to go through that, right? Because that's a big hit. School was always hard, and I didn't finish college. Actually, in my sophomore year in college, I played more than I studied. That's just the way that went. And I ended up looking for a job. Now, I had been in men's retail through high school and those 2 years of college. And I ended up going in to look at stuff in the women's wear industry, and I went into textiles, and I found this fabric. I brought it to the menswear industry, and that became the leisure suit. That's a quick story about the leisure suit. The leisure suit was a very interesting study because it was a very good garment initially, and then it got knocked off, and it got knocked off, and it got knocked off, and it got knocked off. And every time it was knocked off, it was reduced. It wasn't like it got knocked off up or knocked off down. And eventually, after about 6 years, it fell off the cliff. And I found myself looking for a job. To go into that, I realized the experience I had, I didn't know what I really knew, but I'd done some deals in real estate when I was in the textile business. And one of those deals was renting 10,000 square feet of the MGM building for my offices. And I ended up getting the executive office floor of MGM. They were moving out to open the MGM Grand in California, in Las Vegas. And that was part of what kicked off the leisure suit and its popularity, because I kept on having shows, fashion shows there. And I realized also the real estate that I had built, a 50,000 square foot knitting mill. So putting those two things together, I started to think about real estate. New York City was at the bottom of the market. It was dying. Stores were vacant, buildings were vacant. All the industrial buildings, the manufacturers are moving to the south, they're moving out of the country and going out of business. So here are all these industrial buildings that were empty. But they weren't empty because artists started moving in and making their studios and making their residential homes within those spaces. Living in a loft building or living in an industrial building is totally illegal in New York. The powers that be said, we can't do anything about that. We got nothing to fill it with. So they turned the other way. And I started to see that all these people were actually living in spaces that were not legal. Started to buy a couple of loft buildings, and they made them legal. Same lifestyle, same space, but now the city, which it eventually did, started to concentrate on those buildings again. These people couldn't be moved out because they were living legally. And that's kind of what you have to do in real estate. You have to pick a place. You have to pick a time. It's a matter of seeing something that, in this case, artists saw, but regular folk didn't. Developers didn't. As a matter of fact, I went to bring some developers into it. And this was on in Soho, West Broadway, and they wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't do it. So I did it. That's how I got
Jerry,
into real estate.
I want to go back to those moments when you were in school you have this disability of dyslexia, and you don't know this, but I used to be a special education teacher. So I would have classes full of kids with reading disabilities, and some of which had dyslexia. And it's kind of an invisible disability. It's not kind of, it is an invisible disability because just by looking at someone, you don't know that they have dyslexia, and you don't know that they're not able to read to the same ability that typical kids can. So you have these experiences as a kid of getting laughed at, being forced to read in front of the class. And I'm sure, like most kids, you tried to fake your way through it, and different kids have different strategies, whether it's making jokes or going to the bathroom, or, kids have different strategies of trying to save face in those kinds of situations. Can you tell me about how, if at all, those moments, which I'm sure maybe caused some insecurity for you, how did that fuel you, if at all, to go on to do some pretty big entrepreneurial things with creating the Lofts and the Leisure Suit and the Bowery Hotel? Did those moments as a kid end up fueling you later on in life?
Well, first of all, my parents were very good about this whole thing. I didn't know at the time what they were doing, and I didn't know because I kept on going to remedial reading classes. They sent me a special teacher, and they did what they had. And we were poor. We weren't able to afford that type of thing, as it turns out. We lived in Flushing, 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. There were 5 of us. So it wasn't easy for them to come up with the money and to do what they had to do. But they did. To say it worked, it didn't work. I kept on having problems reading. And I kept on having problems with school. The one saving grace in school were the teachers. I ingratiated myself or whatever, and was mentored by these teachers. And they got me through. So, and by the way, I've had mentors through my whole business career. And you got to look for the mentors. You're not looking for the hangers-on. You're not looking for the people who take advantage of it. You're looking for the people who can teach you and are willing to teach you. That's how you make success.
Can you talk about any?
Did I answer? Good. I don't know if I answered the whole question.
Since you mentioned mentors, can you talk about any impactful mentors that you've had, how you found them, and what kind of an impact they had on you?
Well, the teachers were the teachers. They were there. There was one teacher in particular who, DeFalco. I don't remember his first name now. His name was DeFalco. He was a very great guy. I'm not going to mention an actor's name that he looked like, but he did at the time. And I was in awe of this guy. And he took me down a road to get me to the next level and next level. And then he did an unconscionable thing. You know what that was?
Tell me.
Can you guess? He became a lawyer and he left teaching. And that's unconscionable. That's other people who are mentors were people who are already in an industry. You go to the older people who are in an industry and you talk to them. In some cases, nobody ever talks to them, but you talk to them. And they have the experience and they have the ability and they're very giving. And you're basically picking their brain. And isn't that a bad thing? This is a growing thing. That actually is better than any education you can get. Does that
Jerry,
answer that question?
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about your life's trajectory and some of the pivotal moments, and a theme that comes to mind is that you're a bit of a trailblazer with developing the leisure suit and developing the ability for people to live in lofts in New York City. And then more recently, you have invested in solar farms, and these environmental ideas have become extremely important to you. So, can you talk a little bit about your investment in this huge solar farm on Long Island? Can you talk me through that deal and what was the inspiration for investing in that?
My wife, we live in
That's a good
Southampton.
answer.
Yeah, it is. That's the best answer. She's been an inspiration straight on through. So, but this particular one, uh, she came in one day very upset, and she brought in a yellow um, tag, and the yellow tag was about pesticides being put on the ground, and kids shouldn't play there, and dogs shouldn't play there, and stuff like that. And I looked at her. I said, "What's this about?" I had never had an idea about the environment. They've been thought about the environment. And this goes before, you know, electric cars. It goes before all that stuff. So I thought about it, and I was in the midst of building a house. So I decided to build because that's all I knew at that time. I had been building in the city, and I said, let me build a greenhouse, 100% greenhouse. And that wasn't such an easy task then. And I went and I built a 100% greenhouse, the first greenhouse in Southampton, creating its own energy from the ground and the roof through solar and geothermal. All the insulation, didn't use lumber on the exterior, all those things that are green. So that was my first experience in the environment. A couple of years pass, and I have a piece of property, 100 acres. And I go to the community where that acreage is. I'm not going to mention the community because they wouldn't like what I'm going to say. But they fought me on building those 100 homes, green homes. Okay. The property was industrial or commercial. I let it go again. I was in Italy. I'm driving down a road in Italy, and I see something that looks like water, but there shouldn't be any water. And it was a reflection of sun on solar panels. I drove around, went into the farm, with an old Italian guy, and he gave me a view that I thought was amazing. He told me that the solar panel generated enough energy for the town, and he took me under the solar panels, and I saw gardens. They were growing vegetables under the solar panels. So here's a situation where you get the best of both worlds, right? You get the food that you're going to take away because you're going to put up solar farms or land, right? And you grow underneath it. Now, that's not going to work everywhere, but it will work many places. So I came back and I said to my brother, look, we have this land, and my other partners. I said, we have this land. I want to do a solar farm. Actually, I told him I want to do a farm and a solar farm. And then I had a 6-year fight. The same group didn't want the houses, also didn't want the solar farm. And they tried and stopped me at every turn. And they really did. I was off the cliff because they put a law through. This is now the government puts a law through to take my land. And the only thing that helped me is Governor Cuomo vetoed the bill. That's why that solar farm exists today.
It's a great story and a story of perseverance, something that takes 6 years to do. So many people would give up and move on to other things, but you stuck with it. And I think that's really commendable and a great symbol of your life, really. Most recently, you've released a book called Jump on the Train. Will you take us through the journey of writing the book? What was your inspiration for writing it, and what was that journey like?
Okay. First of all, jump on the train is what you said before, which is perseverance. When you get on the train and you have the vision, you got to stay to the end. You have to stay and be true to yourself. Whether it takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, obviously, financial situations evolve, but we're making energy now for Long Island from the sun. You don't have to touch anything. So the inception of the book came again from my wife. This was COVID. Now you gotta understand something. I'm dyslexic. I don't read. I did all this stuff. It did, having fixed the dyslexia, which I'll explain to you later, didn't change the fact that I was a horrible reader and an impossible writer. My wife, and we were, I don't know, a month into COVID, and she said she wrote a short story, a memoir. I read it. It's great. She said, you should write a short story. And I said, no, I'm going to write a book. Of course, the bravado is the bravado. And I sat down every day. I have a muse that I spoke to on the phone, like we're talking now, Tess Lowe, who walked back and forth and threw out ideas, and I kept on writing the book. And that's how the book got written.
Someone with dyslexia writing a book seems counterintuitive, but to me, it seems inspiring. So, can you walk me through what tools or strategies helped you in the process of writing this book, with literacy being such a challenge for you?
The first one I would say is Tessa Lowe and my wife. They both helped me make this book. I didn't initially write this book for commercial. I wrote it for my kids and my grandkids, so they know who Poppy was, right? And then I started, as I was writing it, I'm seeing for the first time that these are fascinating stories. I mean, I lived it. I had the pains and wounds from it, but I never looked at it in its entirety. And as we were writing, I sent the chapter out to a friend who was very supportive, another friend who was supportive. And each of those things were like an ego boost. And I continued to write the book. So that's why we're sitting here now. The actual physical writing is typing on a computer. I mean, that's how we did it. And we did it back in, we talked basically daily. I did the writing at night, we looked over it, and that's how we did it.
So the book details your journey from having a childhood and struggling with dyslexia, struggling through school, and having incredible success through your life, through entrepreneurial ventures, through perseverance. And it's an incredibly inspiring story. If a listener wants to check the book out, learn more about you, where would you like to send people to check out your book?
The book is on Amazon. My name, LinkedIn, Gerald Rosengarten on LinkedIn. We have a site there. But let me talk to commercial, if I could, commercial developers.
Please.
There was one thing. My parents moved down to Florida from that 5-room apartment, 2-bedroom, not 5-room, 2.5-bedroom apartment to the same size apartment down here, except it was just that. And when they bought into that apartment, which I told them to buy, that was one of the first places that was built down here of its kind. There are now 7,000 families in that development. And they're all separate buildings of about 50 buildings apiece, 25 on the first floor and 25 on the second floor. My mother asked who should buy, upstairs or downstairs, more expensive upstairs. I said, no, you lived your whole life under people, buy upstairs. Well, that upstairs and downstairs turned out to be a civil war. I mean, a total civil war. When I say it was a civil war, the people downstairs felt like the lower class, and the upstairs felt like the upper class. And then it came around. My mother said she had problems with her knees. So I said to my brother, let's put an elevator. And my father said, I'll never give you that. And I said, okay, let's put up a lift. So they're not going to use it all the time, but only when they need, when they have a problem. So I've made a proposal to put in a lift. You mentioned time, right? This took over 2.5 years. From one committee to another committee to the final committee, which was the whole 7,000 people. They had a vote on it. And it was a 13-seat theater and 200 people more in the aisles who came to listen to this cell of why there should be a lift. And I had made all the statements I had always made. And I said, and still we're here trying to vote on this thing. I said, okay. You're not putting in a lift. You're putting in a spare tire for your neighbors. That was the line. Now this is for developers. Housing down in Florida or any place, take into account that we're living longer and that people have needs beyond what used to be the time frame. Don't put up 2-story situations without a means to get up to the top. That was that.
That's a powerful story and something I think that developers are increasingly taking into account is ADA accessibility and making sure people of all abilities can access buildings. Jerry, as we finish up here, are there any parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you want to leave listeners with? I know you live your life by the motto, either jump on the train or let it go by. So can you talk about either that quote or any other parting words of wisdom for listeners?
The first thing you have to develop is security. In the book, I call it a drizzler. It's a little jacket that used to be made all over the place by London Fog. And it did all their enough money from that jacket to cover them so they could make other things. Everyone needs, for peace of mind, the drizzler. When they have that, then they can start to look outside their normal realm. Never be hindered by what you know. Go outside that box. See what's not there. That's how most of the stuff has been developed over the years.
Jerry, this has been a great conversation, very inspiring. Your life story is an inspiration to many. Your perseverance through challenges and your willingness to stick with things even when things are tough and overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The book is Jump on the Train. Jerry, I sincerely appreciate your time today and enjoyed hearing from your wisdom here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure, truly a pleasure. See, it was easy. You made
Listeners, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. If you connected with what we had to say today, feel free to reach out to either one of us. We would love to speak with you. Until next time, take care.